I didn't put a lot of money into it. I didn't put a lot of sweat equity into it. I was just happy if I ever made my money back. And we were getting close to where I was gonna make my money back, but we were also getting close to just going out of business. We kind of had this weird decision to make of, do we just ship all the stuff back and say, well, it was a fun run? Or do we take a risk and try to make this thing work? I had to decide, like, do I keep trying to take on new clients, or do I keep this foundation thing alive? My name's Hunter Thomas. So I'm a co-owner of Foundation, and my role is more so, nowadays I'm in a transition period, stepping out of kind of running the day-to-day and into, I guess you could say, kind of steering the ship that is Foundation, making sure that we're meeting our goals, meeting our targets, and then thinking through what are we gonna look like in 5 years, 10 years, all that fun stuff. So it all started back in the disc golf off season of 2017. One of my friends, Paul, and another one of my friends, Nick, came to me and we were talking through possibly starting an online retail store and what it would look like, how it would work, and we came up with the name Foundation Disc Golf. Designed a logo, all this stuff. We're thinking about starting to build a website. Then the season came, Paul went back on the road, and it all fell apart. We just never talked about it again. Next off season, going 2018, going into the year 2019, Paul and a different one of my friends, Zach, were apparently having the same conversation. And at this point, I was doing freelance graphic design. I was already married. I was in a different stage of life. And so Paul called me and just asked me, how much would it cost for you to build a website? And I asked him, like, what do you need the website for? He explained it to me, like, hey, we're gonna start Foundation, what we talked about. I was like, well, I'll build the website if I can just be a part owner. Like, you just give me a percentage of the company and I'll build the website for free. And so he's like, oh, sick, I didn't know if you'd want to be involved or not. And so that was kind of when it started. I built the website and I bought our first hoodie order, and that got me ownership in the company. And then from there, it grew and grew and grew until eventually Brody bought in, and then the company really took off. And then after that, I was able to leave behind all my other responsibilities and go full-time with Foundation.
My name is Brody Smith. I'm a co-owner of Foundation. I am more, I guess you could say, in front of the camera, if you will, on the social media side. I try to get more people interested in disc golf. I try to get people to go and check Foundation content out. I would say that is like my main goal, and then I'm occasionally in the mix of like the bigger business decisions. So what brought me in the sport of disc golf, I played ultimate frisbee for a while, and I took a break from that to do some other things, and then ended up trying to come back, and my knees and everything were a little bit jacked up, if you will. So wasn't able to compete at ultimate frisbee, but still had a love of throwing a frisbee, and found that disc golf kind of filled that void that I was missing on the competitive side. And once I got involved with disc golf and the Pro Tour, I wanted to try to find a way to involve myself something long-term wise, because I knew I wasn't gonna be able to play disc golf professionally forever. And that is when I got in talks with Hunter and Paul about Foundation Disc Golf. And we ended up working out something to where I became a co-owner.
So we started in 2019, and by late summer of 2019, we were in kind of an interesting predicament where we weren't sure. In my head, I didn't put a lot of money into it. I didn't put a lot of sweat equity into it. I was just happy if I ever made my money back. And we were getting close to where I was gonna make my money back, but we were also getting close to just going out of business. Luckily, our deals we had worked out was basically with the manufacturers. If we couldn't pay them back, we could send our product back and they would credit our invoices for that. And then we would basically just owe them if there was a balance. And we were at that point where we kind of had this weird decision to make of, do we just ship all the stuff back and say, well, it was a fun run? Or do we take a risk and try to make this thing work? And we decided to take the risk. I actually advised against it. I was like, guys, I don't want to risk more money, because like if we put all this money into more inventory and more stuff from other manufacturers, then we could lose all of it. And then now we're in a much different spot. Then right now we could just wipe our hands clean. But I was pushed back. We decided to take the risk, and it worked out. And so then come January of 2020 is when Brody first came to town. He came just to kind of train for disc golf, learn a little bit more about disc golf. He was just getting into it. And I met him, and we kind of talked a little bit then. At that point, on my radar at least, I had no clue of he would even be interested in buying into Foundation, doing more stuff with disc golf, none of that. I just thought it was awesome because I liked watching him on YouTube and I got to meet him. I was like, that was sick. Come May, Paul brought it up of like, hey, Brody might be interested in buying in. What would it look like? And at this point, Foundation, our social media was starting to grow. We were able to monetize on social media. We had a Patreon we were building. Our podcast was getting more popular. Instead of just my mom and dad watching it, there was now a few thousand people watching it, so that was cool. But we didn't really know where we were headed. We just had a bunch of stuff and we were trying to keep it all alive and juggle it all, and we didn't have a good plan. And when Brody bought in May of 2020, it kind of changed our path, and we understood, oh, social media, instead of what we were using it for, of like, yeah, we can grow the sport and be an exciting front, and we can also use that to drive traffic to the online store. This can be a whole separate business.
I thought what they were doing, I mean, retail side, I think anyone can kind of start a retail store, and it's, you know, there's not too much on that side of like personality, if you will. But what I saw that I really liked is the media side. They were interested in trying to push the media of disc golf, specifically the professional side. And I thought they were doing a decent job at that. I thought they were very interested in trying to give people content that maybe people hadn't had in the past, and I wanted to be a part of that.
And that was kind of the moment it clicked. And funny enough, at the time, what I was doing was the main source of my income I was living on was running social media pages for real estate agents. And so social media marketing was something I was super passionate about and I really enjoyed. And for some reason, I just never rolled it over into Foundation until Brody came in and he started like pushing the boundaries on why aren't we doing things this way? Why don't we up it to this many videos a week? Why don't we do this podcast, that podcast? So he bought it in May, and by July I was full-time, because then I realized my two worlds could come together and I could do what I really loved in social media and use it for something else I really loved, which was disc golf.
So when I'm in season, there is, I'm a lot less hands-on, I would say. And now that we're kind of in the off season, I'm able to be more at, whether it's meetings or I'm more involved with, you know, sending ideas and stuff, where during the season, my goal really is to try to be as best of a player as I can, because I know if I play better, if I do better, that is going to actually help Foundation.
What I'm always worried about is with expansion and with growth of a company, you want it to be sustainable. So I don't want to get people on payroll, invest in new processes and inventory and, you know, facilities, and then that just be one of the peaks. And we think we're at a certain point when we're not. And with a new sport, it's vulnerable because there's a lot of players, people being introduced to it for the first time. Not all of them are going to stick around. And also the buying pattern of someone who's brand new into a sport is a lot different from the buying pattern of someone who's a few years in. And so trying to navigate that and navigate the market of a sport that doesn't really have an identity on the retail side yet, if it doesn't really have an identity on what the modern landscape looks like within the sport, that's been probably the biggest challenge, is trying to make sure that we hit payroll every month. And thankfully that hasn't been a problem, but that's been something that's always stressful of, okay, what if this growth isn't true growth? And what if that tanks? And we've seen that pull back in the market because disc golf boomed during COVID. People were encouraged to get outside. It was a free sport to play. You just had to go spend 15 bucks on a disc. And so that was a huge boom. And luckily, we were able to estimate how much of that is a true boom and how much wasn't. We slightly overestimated how much was a true boom, but we were able to do it in a sustainable way to where it's come down and then it's gone back up now on an actual trajectory that feels much more sustainable, feels much more true, and to where we're in a really good spot where we're at a sustainable level of growth where we can sustain what we're doing and start to push forward again. But that's been one of the more stressful things to try to navigate, is look at the outside market, watch stuff and try to notice trends before they happen so that we can be proactive instead of reactionary. Instead of letting stuff happen to us and then figure out, oh, we need to pivot, trying to pivot first so that when the market gets there, we're already set up and ready. And we've made a few bets on that, and so far all of them have paid off. Some of them by luck, some of them by actual calculated we were right.
I think one of the big goals obviously is being able to create jobs for people that love disc golf. I think that's a cool thing to do. Also be a hub for content creators, people that want to create disc golf content, being able to facilitate that with whether that is social media help or creative ideas or whatever it may be. I think being able to still push the disc golf media side, the content side, that's the part that I'm most passionate about.
I think in 5 years, right now we've kind of almost split into 3 businesses, where we have our retail stores, our brick and mortar stores, we have our online e-commerce side, and then we have the media company. And now that we have thought of it that way, we're able to put people in position to really focus and grow those areas. So I think in 5 years, we'll definitely have expanded to a few more retail locations. And then on the media side, I definitely think we'll bring in a few more personalities, possibly expand to another podcast or two. And realistically, I think a lot of what will happen over the next 5 years is the infrastructure behind the scenes, where we'll build out more social media teams, more manager positions at retail stores, to where we can then over the 10-year period, that next 5 year, go all in and really grow it. So I think the next 5 year is building, the foundation to be able to grow things at a much faster rate over the 5 to 10 year gap.
I think we have another brick and mortar store, I would say, in 5 years. I don't know what location, but I think we have another one. I believe the one in Charleston's doing pretty solid. So I think we could probably expand to one more of those. I would say, I think we're gonna maybe have, 2 more content people would be my guess in 5 years.
When Foundation started, the biggest goal was to be able to do this full time. And now I've been able to do that for 3 years. So that was a huge goal, and something I've achieved. At this point, I think one of my goals is basically be able to get to a point where I can continue to provide jobs and provide the opportunity that I've been blessed with of making what I love my full-time job to more and more people. And I think another big goal is just keeping disc golf exciting and pushing the sport forward. And that's why we have our media outlet laid out the way it is, where we have a YouTube channel that to the outside is very silly and very fun. And that is to engage new players and reach a new audience who might not know what disc golf is, but they might watch these YouTubers playing this weird sport. And that kind of engages the newer audience. And then if you're into disc golf, that's where our podcast comes in, where we cover the pro scene, we go deep into what players are throwing, we do interviews, we have a bunch of different shows to scratch those itches. And all of that, the purpose is to engage and excite disc golfers of all skill levels everywhere in the sport, so that we can help the sport grow, push the sport forward, and then sustain that growth. And so continuing to grow and develop that plan over the next several years, and make it where, right now we reach a certain audience, but widen that audience with new faces, new personalities, new shows, so that we can attack an even broader audience, I think is always the goal.